If you're new to public speaking, you're probably feeling anything from a few butterflies in your stomach to complete and utter terror. Trust me when I say that those are common reactions to doing something unfamiliar. We will spend the semester learning all the tricks to putting together and delivering an effective speech. But right now, the most important thing is for you to get up in front of this audience and talk to us. You've got to break the ice, and the sooner you do it, the better. So I'm going to help you put together something that is going to do two things. First, it will give you an understanding of what it feels like and looks like from your perspective to stand up in front of this audience and talk about yourself. And second, it will help us understand the makeup of this particular audience, because the more you know about each other, the better you can adapt your speech to the audience. So, let's get started. The first thing you need to do is understand the assignment. For this class, the first speech is always fairly short, usually between 2 and 3 minutes, and the topic is something you're very familiar with, so you don't need to do any research. You just need to think creatively about yourself and your life. You have 3 choices of how to proceed. You can bring an item that has meaning in your life and tell us about it. You can describe an important person in your life and tell us how they have affected you. Or you can talk about a memorable incident in your life and the impact it has had on you. Pick only one of these things and organize your thoughts so that you can explain it to us in a clear and interesting way. If it's something amusing, by all means use words and body language to point out the humor in it. If it's something dramatic, use your creativity to really bring that out as well. It's completely up to you, but you need to remember to organize it correctly. All good speeches have 3 specific parts: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. As you can see by this chart, the body of the speech is the largest part. This is where you really give us the majority of your information. The introduction sets the audience up for the body, and the conclusion summarizes and ends the speech. So let's look at what belongs in each part of the speech. The purpose of an introduction is to get the audience's attention and make them interested in listening to you and your topic. The first words out of your mouth should not be, "I'm going to talk about," and then tell us your topic, because you don't want to blurt that out. You want to lead into it. You need to come up with a good opening line. For instance, if you're going to be telling us about your once-in-a-lifetime trip to Italy that you took last year, you don't want to start by saying, "So last year I went to Italy." You want to lead into it by saying something like, "Most of us have a dream vacation in our minds, someplace on our bucket list that we hope someday to visit. Well, last year I got to cross my dream vacation off my bucket list when I visited Italy." Then you want to briefly tell us what the body of your speech is going to be about. Something like, "So today I'm going to take you on a little tour of Italy so you can see it through my eyes. I'll tell you about the things I saw in Pisa, Venice, and of course, Rome." Then, in the body of the speech, here's where you go into detail and explain the topic to us. In order to be clear and effective, this part should be organized very well. There are lots of ways to organize a speech body, but for purposes of this speech, you probably want to choose one of 2 organizational patterns, either chronological or topical. Let me give you examples of each. So let's say you're doing the speech about visiting Italy, then you might want to focus on 3 major places or sites you visited while you were there and talk about which one you went to first, then the next one, and finally the last one. That's chronological. You talk about them in the order that you visited them. But let's say you want to do a speech about, say, your grandfather and why he's had such a big impact on you. You might want to think about a few qualities he has and give examples of each. So maybe you learn the value of 2 things from your grandfather: hard work and honesty. You could talk about him as a hard worker, give examples of that and how it affected you. Then you could talk about his honesty, give some examples of that and what you learned from it. That's topical. Now, you don't have time to discuss more than 2 or 3 things, so don't try to do too much. That's something that new speakers often have trouble with. Keep your time limit in mind. You don't have to say everything there is to say about your topic, just what you think is the most important and interesting to get your point across. And you also want to use words and phrases that help you move through the information to make it flow smoothly. Words like first, next, finally are good because they help us understand where you are in the speech, and those are transitions. So make sure you use things like that. The conclusion is usually very short, but also very important. You can't just end abruptly and say, well, that's all, I'm done. Well, a lot of people do that, but it's a really lame way to end a speech, so don't do it. So what should you do instead? Let us know you're almost done by summarizing, saying something like, so, as you can see, I had a great time in Italy and will always remember how amazing it was. Then you want to have a strong ending. Something like, I highly recommend that you add Italy to your bucket list. That sounds like I'm done, doesn't it? After that, it's perfectly acceptable to say thank you, and that will really let the audience know that you're done. In this class, we speak extemporaneously, which means prepared and practiced, but not memorized or read from a piece of paper. This is not a reading class, and it's important for you to look at your audience while you're talking to them. It's not necessary, however, to completely memorize your speech, although with enough practice, you should know it fairly well. You need to have enough information in your notes to keep you on track, but not have the whole thing written out. Start by saying the speech aloud. Don't just read it to yourself inside your head. You really need to verbalize it. Get people to listen to you give it. Have them give you some feedback about your delivery. And always time your speech. It needs to stay within the time limit, which for this particular speech is 2 to 3 minutes. When you come to class to give the speech, be prepared. Good preparation is the best way to reduce your nervousness. Of course, you still might be nervous, which, as I said before, is extremely common. Just know that everyone else in the class is in the same situation that you are. When you get up to speak, come to the front of the room, stand facing us, smile and gesture naturally, and try to focus on getting your story out to the audience rather than focusing on how you feel. I know that sounds harder than it actually is. I can promise you, if you make your information the most important thing, then your anxiety will take a back seat. You might still feel anxious, but you'll be able to get your message across to the audience.